But speaking of which, a director in their twilight years producing a cracking casino-based movie to a director just starting out on their feature career and doing likewise.
That sounds very much like a lead-in to Hard Eight, does it not? In which Philip Baker Hall's Sidney finds everyone's favourite lovable sad sack, John C. Reilly's John Finnegan, slumped outside a Nevadan diner, broke and forlorn after failing to win enough money gambling to pay for his mother's funeral. For reasons that will perhaps only become apparent as the film progresses, Sidney takes John under his wing in order to teach him the secrets of the gambling game, although seemingly that's mainly in the sense of tricking casinos into thinking they're high rollers and comping them rooms rather than actually winning money. But at any rate, it works well enough for them to stay together for 2 years, forming something of a father and son bond between them, between the calm and collected Sidney and the, to use Wikipedia's somewhat euphemistical description, unsophisticated and not overly intelligent John. Complications arise when John falls in love with a waitress and part-time hooker, Gwyneth Paltrow's Clementine. That second part of Clementine's CV leads to one particularly unpleasant situation that a panicked John calls both Sidney and his new friend, Samuel L. Jackson's Jimmy, a casino security worker who's more or less wandered in off a Tarantino set. This brings up some history and further complications between Sidney and Jimmy, and I suppose the watchword here is economical, with a small set of characters and locations, and for the most part this film's all the stronger for it. I'm certainly not going to knock any of the performances, particularly surprising in the case of Paltrow, seen here as a decent actress, rather than the latter-day bullshit woo-boo new age hack fraud snake oil saleswoman persona that she's devolved into of late. And the characters are interesting and likeable enough to pull us through what is just about the minimally viable plot, although there's certainly some niggles, perhaps a holdover from its expansion from Anderson's previous short film Cigarettes and Coffee. There's points where this does feel a bit more like a series of ideas for neat character scenes rather than a cohesive story, and while that's certainly more apparent when, say, typing up notes for a review than on casual viewing, it's still pretty noticeable. For example, great as it is to see Your Boy and Ours, Philip Seymour Hoffman again, there's a bunch of scenes that have no particular plot or arguably character utility. Even the more dramatically impactful final reel scenes between Philip Baker Hall and Samuel L. Jackson barely feel connected to the earlier situations. So it's not the most tightly plotted movie in existence, more of a mood piece and character exploration, but I rather suppose that's something P.T. Anderson would admit to embracing fully in his latter works. I suppose with the benefit of hindsight, it's not too surprising that Paul Thomas Anderson's debut feature is good, due to him being, well, Paul Thomas Anderson and all, but I imagine this would have been a pleasant surprise had I seen this back in '96. To be sure, it's not up to the level of his following films, Boogie Nights et al., but it would surely make a shortlist of auspicious debuts. So yes, perhaps not worth breaking the doors down to see, but it's certainly worth asking politely for the key to the door that this film is behind in this analogy for some reason. Look, what I'm trying to say is I liked the movie. What more do you want from me? Leave me alone.
Yeah, I suppose I really liked this. The Master and Hard Eight are the only two Anderson films that have gone under my radar, and you know how fond I am on Boogie Nights and latterly Phantom Thread as well, actually. So a bit surprised that I've not really caught up with those two, but I did enjoy the atmosphere of the piece. The singular most important message I've taken away from this is, man, hasn't Philip Baker Hall really been overlooked as an actor? Because I don't know that he's ever been anything less than great in anything. But besides P.T. Anderson's films, what high profile films has he had major roles in? And I don't think the answer's all that many. So I really enjoyed his character in this, but I was kind of disappointed. I think I get the impression, like yourself, Scott, at quite how the movie resolved itself. I could have done without the revelation in a sense. I just wanted this to be a film about an old guy who has a reason that we never find out for wanting to sort of pass his knowledge on to this young guy. And if that is just out of kindness, then like that would be great. I don't necessarily understand why it was necessary to introduce things, because it's the least believable aspect, and I would argue least compelling aspect of the film is the twist regarding Sidney's character. But overall, I did really like it, and like you, it made me forget that Gwyneth Paltrow is an annoying snake oil salesman, and a propagator of new age nonsense.
And dodgy candles.
Yes, and vaginal eggs and things. So Yeah, I did. I really, really enjoyed it for the most part. For 80% of this film, I was really enjoying what it was doing with the characters and the atmosphere it was creating. And a little bit let down. But again, like you say, a pretty auspicious debut. And I think pretty sharply after this, Anderson honed his steals quite substantially. And perhaps ironically, as his films became longer in length, there was less, either, depending on which way you want to look at it, there was either less extraneous plot material or those movies ended up being comprised almost entirely of extraneous plot material, which is which in either sense is an advancement from this. So yeah, a really interesting movie. I don't think it's going to trouble my favourite lists of all time, but it's I might put this on my list of small screen Sunday watches for a couple of years down the line.
I think it's this is the only P.T. Anderson film I hadn't seen, and I think it's probably a good thing that I didn't make this the first time I saw a P.T. Anderson film. My first was Magnolia, because if this had been my first film, I might never have bothered again, because I did not like this film at all. And part of the problem for me is that there are no likeable characters at all, and that's part of the point of it. I get that, but I need something to hook on to, and 2/3 of the characters, let's say there's three main characters, 2/3 of the charactersness are stupid people, and I don't like stupid people and they make stupid decisions. And, and I really like John C. Reilly. I find he's really good. It's like everybody's favourite lovable sad sack, and here he's just such a wet noodle.
He's just a sad sack without the lovable prefix. Yeah.
He's just changed lovable for moronic, and like I've got no time for characters like that. And actually, I didn't care for Gwyneth Paltrow. Every now and then I'll see her in something and I'm thinking, I quite like her in this, and then I go back to it just thinking, yeah, snake oil salesman with her weirdly scented candles and her jade orifice fillers. I just thought she was terrible in this, and also it's because I don't know if the problem is actually the writing or the acting, but I just didn't. It's probably the acting. More so that she's miscast rather than bad. I absolutely didn't buy her as somebody so flaky that would have gone out and married John C. Reilly that day.
Yeah, that rang a bit hollow, didn't it?
Yeah, it's like, I'm not buying that. And similarly, my other big issue with the film is like, I just didn't buy Philip Baker Hall as a hitman. What I'm aware of is that maybe that's just because films have conditioned me to thinking of film hitmen in a particular way, and he didn't fit that mould. But whether that's the case or not, I don't know. But in this film, it's like, oh, yeah, no. I didn't. I like Philip Baker Hall, but I didn't buy him in that role at all. So I didn't buy him in that role. I didn't like John C. Reilly. I didn't like Gwyneth Paltrow, and I didn't think Gwyneth Paltrow's character made sense, or at least as played by Gwyneth Paltrow. So there's basically nothing for me in this film, other than, as Scott said, Samuel L. Jackson having hopped across some Pulp Fiction or something, you know. So, so yeah, this did nothing for me, and I'm quite glad that I hadn't seen it before now, because I said it might have made me miss out on some of my favourite films of all time. Because I would have been so put off by this film.
See, for me, that rose film by Magnolia, that film just winds me up entirely the wrong way. And I didn't mind this so much. I didn't find this as indulgent as I find Magnolia. But yeah, I get where you're coming from. I wasn't as offended by Paltrow, but yeah, there were big aspects of that I didn't buy. I didn't have as much of a problem with the notion of Philip Baker Hall as a killer now that you've let the cat out of the bag, Drew.
I'm sorry, Craig.
For anyone who hasn't seen this 25-year-old film. Yeah, I just kind of wish it had been left, because I'd kind of made up my mind when he'd spoken about his two kids that he hasn't seen, and he didn't really even know where they were in so long then, that were about the ages of John C. Reilly and Gwyneth Paltrow's characters. I kind of just wanted to leave it in my head as he's performing these sort of kind acts and looking after these two by way of trying to come to terms and make amends for how he's treated his own children or how he's neglected his own children. And I kind of just wanted it to be left at that, really. It's not that I didn't buy him as someone who could have killed someone, because honestly, these days that could be anybody, but I just kind of felt it was unnecessary.
Yeah, again, like I said, I wasn't offended by Gwyneth Paltrow in this. I just didn't buy that kind of that flakiness of that card, at least as portrayed by her. But yeah, if it's maybe the problem is that my issue with Philip Baker Hall's character Sidney is compounded by just I'm not buying him in that role. But yeah, you're right, it's unnecessary. You could have had that and it could have been a tragic accident or something like that. You know, when he felt you could keep almost all of that in there, including the Samuel L. Jackson blackmail, and just not have it be quite so sinister, because I don't really think that adds anything.
Yeah.
And even you could even have the finale or the with the Samuel Jackson arc anyway be the same, just because of fear, because he thinks this guy's never going to let me go or something, and it's desperation.
I think even, you know, also for a first-time filmmaker, maybe it's just the compulsion that, oh man, the studio's never going to give me the money to make this film unless at some point someone shoots someone else. Like something notable of that scale has to happen. Because
again, no, you could have that, but just have it be because he feels pressured and like put in a corner, and he's like he gets a gun and does that without, and it would just feel very different without having it like he does that professionally, and it's just, and especially to like the suggestion would be that he's in the mafia, but then if he's in the mafia and it was only a mafia hitman, then is he really going through all these casinos in Reno and Las Vegas and nobody knows him? That doesn't seem very likely.
Who knows?
But yeah, it's just that one aspect in particular. Again, I have big other issues with the film, so that's why I don't like it at all. But that one thing, it's like just a few tweaks, and it just wouldn't have been such a kind of egregious problem for me. It would have solved the other issues, but that would have helped a lot.
I think it really does need a bit more cohesion between its various elements that it's thrown around. There's too many points where it kind of throws something that is either so disconnected to whatever was happening before it, or just drops in out of nowhere. Like I say, Philip Seymour Hoffman appearing and having a couple of scenes for no particularly good reason. It's just enough to kind of knock you out of the groove when you're watching it, and kind of have to like re-question, hang on, what's happening now again? And at that point, the connecting tissue becomes a bit too visible at that point, and it's it kind of distracts from the film for me a bit.
Yeah, they do feel a bit disjointed. The Philip Seymour Hoffman scene in particular, I'm thinking about too. Again, a bit of a waste of Philip Seymour Hoffman, because in fact, it's not in the whole film. It's generally a waste of Philip Seymour Hoffman. But it's like part of it seems to be kind of like because he's taunting him for being old, and like, is that going to go down the character route of like, well, he feels old now and come to the end of his life, or maybe hasn't fulfilled his life or anything like that because of this younger guy making fun of him? Like, I thought maybe that's where that was going. No, it doesn't have anything to do with what came before or after, other than the Hard 8 thing, which I still don't know what is. I mean, I kind of vaguely worked out by context, but I don't care. And they're throwing these gambling terms. I'm like, okay, somebody won something on some money on something called Keno. That's good.
I took from that Keno is Keno just the American word for bingo?
I don't know. No, because Americans play bingo. I like it a lot. Yeah, it's very famous, like in Catholic church halls and stuff.
Okay.
Your middle-aged women and older women go and play bingo in church halls and stuff. No, it's no, but again, it doesn't matter. I don't think I would have got anything more from that. But it's like there's a few bits now that kind of almost like it's expecting knowledge from the viewer. Again, I don't imagine it makes much difference. But yeah, again, that whole Philip Seymour Hoffman scene, like, what is that adding to the film? Nothing. It didn't seem to have any utility. Yeah. And it wasn't particularly interesting, so it wasn't like just like a mild diversion, a little interesting vignette or something. It's like, he's a kind of annoying little person in a casino, but I guess casinos have those. Oh, the scene is over now.
I feel like that scene was there. I feel like I know the reason for that scene, but not the purpose of it. I feel like the reason that scene was there was to reveal the fact that although he's this calm, steady, sort of reassuring presence, and he seems to know all of the right things to do in the casino, that Sidney is still susceptible to impulse as well, and he's allowed himself to effectively be goaded into playing more than he wanted to play there for some reason or other. So I felt like it was trying to show a vulnerability in his character, because he just seems so impenetrably right about stuff all the time and so measured and assured. But like you say, I'm not sure what the purpose of that was.
No.
If I'm even right in that observation, which of course I may not be. Hey, but there you go. So that's two all rights and a nah.
Yeah, just before we go on this, talking of utility, what was the utility of that one scene where there's suddenly first-person camera shot? That struck me as very odd. And it's 20 seconds or something? Just when Sidney's going into Clementine's room with coffee and stuff, and John C. Reilly's already in there. It's first-person perspective for like 20 seconds. It's not anywhere else in the film.
I hadn't even thought about that until you mentioned it now, actually. So I don't know.
That really stuck out to me like at the time, and I've been wondering, is this like, what was that for? Because it's not, again, there's no consistency. It's not anywhere else. It doesn't seem to convey anything. And it feels like maybe like a first-time filmmaker experimented with something, but for that one incredibly short moment, it doesn't seem to add anything. Why is that there?
Clearly throwing his hat in the ring for the Doom adaptation.
Why isn't there a version of Hardcore Henry with at least cut by P.T. Anderson?
And with Philip Baker Hall as Hardcore Henry.
Yeah, so I'm guessing neither of you have any insight as to why that's there.
None
That's what I was
whatsoever.
hoping for. But
No. And unfortunately, it's that type of insight people come to us for. Well, the well is dry, people.
apparently, we come to us for that sort of insight, and we can't satisfy ourselves because you've failed me both.
That's it. Yep.